welcome for my presentation today. I'm happy to see that we have a very diverse audience, probably from 7 to 75, which is great. And it shows the interest of such a topic to the population, and especially the interest of the younger generation, as they are interested to see how they are going to make it later in life, especially in Singapore, which is the environment, and the pioneer can confirm this and tell better than me, that has evolved quite fast in the past 30 or 50 years. Okay, so today I will talk about some of the things we do. So I am an immunologist, so I'm interested in your immune system. So the cells, the white blood cells in your blood that helps you to fight against infection and cancer, and how actually the experience we have during life affect this immune system, and how we use this immune system to try to map a little bit people that are maybe at risk, or people that are gonna make it to a longer and healthy life. And to do this, I use some let's say very visual examples. So basically, as a biologist, we have this term of biomarker. You know, the biomarker is usually when you go to the hospital, they will take some blood and assess some biomarkers to see whether your level is high and low. It can be cholesterol, it can be sugar, it can be many things. And as you see, in this picture, you see this dog here, and the owner is always putting him in the back because he likes it. But you see over the years, you see that it has eroded the stain of the car. So this is a mark of the aging of the car. So this is really how we define biomarkers, is what are the marks that actually can indicate us that something has happened. And there are many things that actually affect our systems, not only the immune systems, it's the environment and what we call extrinsic factors, so things that are, let's say, coming from outside. And here I show you an example of these shopping baskets, and the unfortunate ones that are always on the bottom, they are never picked up, so they are always left on the sun. So the UV from the sun is affecting and deteriorating the stain, the red stain here. So this is a typical example of how the environment could affect a system. But of course, as humans, we have ways to avoid those problems to happen, and to avoid those potential harms. So a bit of superstition is that you should never walk below a ladder like this. It brings you bad luck. But you see that even in such occasion, you see how they are trying to avoid these problems to happen. Okay? So this is called prevention. Okay? Fortunately, we have systems to protect us. So we have systems for functioning and systems for protection. Okay? And today, obviously, we're going to focus on the immune system. And this is the picture example of a door from a beach house. And you see from the outside, you have this erosion, but in the inside, you're protected. That's the mission of the immune system. It's really to keep things outside of your body. And in the event they come inside, they still can fight against those aggressions. And some of the effects we observe during a long life, some of these are reversible and some are not. So you have some stress can induce a disbalance, can be temporary or probably a long-term disbalance, but there are ways you can actually come back to the initial state. We have treatments, we have interventions that allows you to recover function. When you get hospitalized, especially in old age, take you time actually to come back to a normal, to the previous states. But there are ways you can do that. And there are what we call erosions, where actually you're losing. You're losing capacity or functionality. And this is hardly reversible. So this is where the concept of anti-aging is. Can we do it? So I hope with these few examples I introduce you a little bit some of the notions we use daily in our lab. But actually humans are not coins, they are not doors, they are not cars. We are far more complex than that. We have a huge amount of interactions, daily interactions. But this is what allows us to adapt during life to some of the situations we have to face. But this is why also this complexity and this adaptation is good for us. So that's why we have evolved and we are more protected probably at the immunological level than other species. But it makes the story more complex for people like me that try to understand how we can keep the functionality of this system. Okay. So what is aging? Okay. So aging, we define it as a multisystemic adaptation. So we tend, and this is what I want to convey today, that aging, we tend to see this as something negative. Okay? And I think if you give you such a definition, I have many people in the room I can see that are probably the age category that will not be so happy. And I agree with them. Aging is just an adaptation. You face many issues during life, many stresses, you respond to it, you adapt to it. It has some consequences. Okay? Unfortunately, sometimes these adaptations are not well done or not well controlled, or you have too many stress at the same time. You have a flu, at the same time you have a dengue infection. The week later you get another infection. And it's difficult sometimes to adapt. You know, we are limited in the capacity to respond to the stress. And you see the immune system is here, but the immune system is just one among the other systems. And immune cells in the blood travel everywhere. Wherever you cut yourself in your body, you will see blood. So it means immune cells go everywhere. Okay? And this is important because they go everywhere to protect you, to make sure wherever, whatever happens, you have enough protection. So here I try to summarize and depict to you what is the concept of biological reserves. So if you take many systems, I took few of them for you as example today, and you will define your biological reserve as a 30-year-old or university student. You will be probably at full capacity for most of the systems. But if you will take the reserves of your parents, whatever age you are, it may be much lower than yours. And you see, in this case, it's just an example, individual can retain very good brain functions, but can have a very severe depletion in the heart, cardiovascular functions. So these people that lose this type of biological reserve, so its capacity to face stress, are more susceptible to end up with cardiovascular diseases. See? And this is what is very important here, is that in this individual, it may be the heart. In another one, it can be lung. In another one, it can be the liver. We don't age similarly. If you look around in your family or friends, some people will have cardiovascular disease, some more infections, some people will have muscle problems. We have a diversity in aging. And this is what we are doing in A-STAR and in collaboration with the National University Hospital. We are part of the Singapore Longitudinal Aging Study. These are elderly Singaporeans. Actually, to be true, is older than 55. And we go to the community centers. We set up a study site in the CC there, where the elderly, they come and they will practice some exercise and play mahjong and things like that. And this is how we are able to get in touch with these people and try to understand the health conditions. And you see, with increasing age, you indeed have an increased prevalence of diseases. So how you can prevent that? Before that, I want to come to this concept again of biological reserve. Here we have measured, it's just one example. This is lung function. So you have to blow in a tube, and then it assesses the quality of your lungs. And you see, from the age of 50 to 100 in this case, you have a continuous decrease in the capacity of your lung. And we know that, okay? So you have a global trend. But what you also see is that you have some people that are around 60, 65, they have a much low capacity, while some people that are in the 9th decade, they retain a much higher capacity. So by definition, these guys are older, but biologically, they're healthier, probably younger, okay? And this is something we are very interested, because there's this group in the United States that actually found that you can calculate, you can predict the biological age of an individual using some simple blood tests, actually. You can get those parameters when you go to the doctor, like cholesterol, FEV1, I just showed you about the lung, your BMI, and some other things, you can say if somebody is going to age very fast or if somebody is not going to age very fast. So you can predict that. And this is very interesting. So we try to apply this to our Singaporeans here. And this is what we did. And to make a long story short, in blue here are the individuals that are biologically older than the chronological age. So the three groups here, they are all around 68 years old, based on date of birth. But biologically, these guys are much older, okay? And these are the people that die faster, okay? It's a very harsh outcome here, mortality. But it's just to show that the concept of biological aging is relevant. Those people that are biologically older are probably the people at risk. And this is what we want to convey with this information. So of course what you want to know now is how I can reduce my biological age, how can I slow down aging to make it longer in a healthier situation. And this is really the effort of a series of scientists, and I can tell you it's a very hard and competitive task, but we are trying this here at A-Star. And when we run our own analysis here in Singapore, actually this is a study we have published last year, quite nice study, where actually we show that we could predict mortality in a 10-year study. So we could predict mortality. In this case, it's the first time we can predict mortality based on cause of death. So we know, based on some markers, if though a group of people are more susceptible to cardiovascular or to cancer or to some respiratory infectious related diseases, okay? And when we did this study, we realized that many of the biomarkers are related to inflammation. And inflammation is part of your immune system, okay? Just to show you how the immune system can be used to stratify people. People that are gonna survive, people that gonna probably are more at risk for certain disease, and eventually to the mortality associated to the disease. So this is what we call stratification. Immune system, so your immune system is complex, is tightly regulated, and is a lifesaver. No immune system, no life, okay? So the immune system, you daily are in touch with your immune system, your saliva, your tears, the mucus you have from the airway and the skin. So the skin is the largest organ of your body, okay? And the skin is a physical barrier, very important to protect you, okay? So beside this first line of defense that actually allow you to get rid of probably 90% or more of the daily stressors, in this case we talk about viruses, we talk about bacteria, parasites, and so on and so on. Beside this, you have the immune system, the cells in your blood and in your tissues. Here is just to show you that it's complex. It's many different cell types, many interactions, many things that are produced by the cells. You have a lot of talking between cells to make sure that they really work as an orchestra and that the symphony goes very well and that you're protected and that you're not facing any complication when you have an infection, okay? The problem is that with age, these immune systems tend to fade, okay? And the reduction in the immune robustness is often associated with susceptibility to diseases, infections, cancers, and so on and so on. And this is why it's important to really look at the immune system more carefully and try to keep the immune functions to the highest level. And I just talked about the inflammation before, and why inflammation is important, because historically it's something that we have studied and we are assessing since many decades. So we have a lot of background with inflammation. This is the routine marker we get from your blood, inflammation. So when you go to the doctor, he says, I'm going to check your inflammation. He will measure CRP, C-reactive protein, for example. Okay. And the thing that is interesting is that after the first year of life, where the kids adapt to the environment, it's very stable, the inflammation. But from some age, around, is it 65, is it 75, still not very clear. It's probably different from one individual to the other. You have an imbalance. Something goes up, something goes down. what we call inflammaging, inflammation in aging. And this inflammaging actually coincides with the high prevalence of age-associated diseases. So is it a cause or is it a consequence? We still don't know. But there's a very strong relationship between inflammation, inflammatory levels, and diseases. And this is why you may hear and you may see advertisement about pills or vitamins or some components that can allow you to reduce inflammation. Okay, it's true, high inflammation is not good. Okay, so how do we do in the lab to assess biological aging, immunological aging, inflammation, etc., etc. This is a cell. You have trillions of cells in your body, and all the cells share very similar, let's say, structures. And to assess the quality of the cell, so the aging of the cell, in today I will show you about a bit of proteins. But you can assess the aging of the cells, the aging of the individual using genes like RNA, the expression of RNA, the DNA quality. Maybe you hear about epigenetics sometimes. So this is the quality of the DNA, and so on and so on. Okay? So in the laboratory, I summarize you an experiment we do daily. This is what we observe. If you take blood from a young individual, I see many young people here, and we can try later if you're interested. You will see in the blood of a young individual, when I mean young, it's below 35 by definition, okay? And you see a lot of naive T cells. So the naive cells are cells that are patrolling, looking for many bugs. Is there any bug, any bacteria or viruses that I can fight? And you have also in green here like memory cells. Memory cells, they are the cells that we generate when we vaccinate you. Why we vaccinate is to train your system to make up memory cells. Memory cells, as the name says, they have a good memory. They will know, oh, I've seen this bug before. I've seen flu before. So next time they see, they will respond very rapidly. So this is to protect you. The problem is that with age, you have accumulation of what we call senescent cells. Senescent cells, they are memory cells that are activated too often. And they become tired. They become age, they become senescent. They cannot proliferate, they cannot do what they have to do, protect you. And this is the problem, the senescence of the immune system. Okay? And there are some bugs that are particularly good in inducing senescence. I'm showing you here the immune history of young and elderly Singaporeans. It's a small group of people, but we have for larger now. But I'm showing you this. So what we have done, we took blood from young and elderly individuals, and we tested in the blood. Have they seen during their life dengue? Have they seen these bacteria, Helicobacter pylori? Have they seen varicella zoster, EBV, HSV, or CMV, cytomegalovirus? And we have tested this because we know some of them, especially this one, CMV. CMV is a herpes virus. And many of you, based on the age of the audience, probably it's 70% prevalence here. You know if you're seropositive, if you are very tired, you have a lot of exam or work, not enough sleep, you will see it in your lips. This is when the herpes comes back. Okay? This is one of the herpes viruses. Okay? And this virus you never get rid of. That's why it comes once, it can come back next month. This virus is very clever. He hides in your central nervous system, and whenever you're weak, he comes back. He's opportunistic. But each time he comes back, he will reactivate your immune system. And this is this monthly or yearly activation that is making your immune system tired and inducing what we call senescence. Okay? And I'm showing you here some real data where we assess the senescence, the frequency of senescent cells in young people versus older people. And you really see that old people, they have more senescent cells. This is what I showed you before. But now, if you take another group of people and you don't care about age, but you separate them based on the fact if they have seen, one and two or more than two of these bugs. And you see that the people that have a high immunological history, they have seen many bugs during their life, they have more senescence. So the aging of the immune system is not just time. It's because during this time you may see a lot of stressors or not. In a clean environment, you won't see a lot, right? And that's why in the elderly Singaporeans here, we have nearly 100% for most of the bugs. Because Singapore, 50 years ago, was not Singapore now. You had much more dengue, for instance, much more other bugs. Now it's much cleaner, okay? Right. So here I show you this map, okay? Uh, what I've shown you before with senescent cells, okay, is one biomarker. What I'm showing you here is what we do when we have multiple biomarkers, okay? And this map actually here represents your immune system. This is the immune system of one individual. Each of the small islands here represent one cell type. I will not go into detail, but you have like T cells, B cells, monocytes, macrophages, diversity of immune cells. Each of them have a specific role. As I told you, they should work as an orchestra. Each of the one has a role and they interact with each other. So you see, to understand the complexity of the immune system and how this evolved with age, we have to go into a very complex type of studies. And this is some of the things we are doing in A-STAR. I will not go into much detail because the complexity is probably not important here. Just to tell you that we are really tackling this type of problems. We are doing multiple types of biomarkers in multiple types of, let's say, elderly, so healthy elderly, elderly with conditions, elderly with family history of diseases, and so on and so on. And our aim is really to make sure we can use the immune system to predict people that are going to make it, and maybe to do intervention for people that are at risk to reduce the risk. Okay? Some concept now, because the topic of this festival is the future of everyone and innovating for a sustainable planet. Okay? Sustainability of the planet cannot go without the aging population, okay? Without the elderly to contribute to that, okay? So how can we better integrate the elderly in Singapore's economy and infrastructure, and how our research at A-STAR actually is helping to do that. And this is something we must do now. In the 70s, you had approximately more than a dozen of individuals, working people, to support the elderly population, the retired population. And you have seen over the years how this has shrunk. This is not data from me to scare you, it's data from the Department of Statistics of Singapore. Okay? This is a reality. And it is expected that in less than in 10 years probably, this will go to a ratio 1 to 2. So we have to make sure that if we have less young individuals that are able to support that the elderly maybe require less, let's say, support or need less support for various reasons I will explain to you. This is not only due to the aging of the population, which is a good thing because we can keep people for longer, but it's also due to the reduced birth rate in Singapore. So there's other ways to improve that, of course. So how to better integrate elderly? First of all, to extend health span. We have extended lifespan significantly in the past decades. You know, the life expectancy in Singapore in the 60s was 60-year-old. Now it's around 85-year-old. Okay? It's amazing how life has been extended. However, the elderly, often they have some diseases. So the number of years with disease is still there. So we have to shrink to reduce the number of years with diseases. Because this will help to change the mentality about aging and just to see it as a negative thing. Oh, I have to support my parents. Or I have to support my grandparents. You know, we have to change that from a perspective of, oh, I have to support my parents to, oh, I can have now my parents to look after my children. Okay? Which is happening, we see it in Singapore. But we still have a population that is sick and a population that is at risk that we need to improve the quality of life. And of course, there are many ways you can improve daily life in Singapore for the elderly. And you have many countries, especially in Japan, for instance, they develop a lot of tools to improve daily life. Okay? But be honest, you don't want to know that you will need this in 10 years or in 15 years. You prefer to hear that you don't need that. You prefer to hear that you're gonna have the opportunity to live, to walk, to do your things independently, to enjoy life the longest as possible. Okay? So our research, how it helps at A-Star. So first we are working a lot and trying via also our communication to aging is not a disease, it's an opportunity. Okay, not just the economical opportunity for countries really to make the society better. But to do this, we need to improve resilience of the population by avoiding stressors. So this is something that is happening. So you have a good hygiene in Singapore, vaccination campaigns, so you have less of these stressors that affect your immune system, and also better combat these infections when you see them, and this is by boosting immunity. Okay? And I will show you just a last piece of evidence from our lab to really show how we can use immunology and biomarkers to show that elderly can contribute to the society if they are healthy, and healthy elderly exist. So what we have done is that we have this is a clinical trial we set up in Singapore with a vaccine company from Europe, and we vaccinated young and elderly Singaporeans. Okay? But what we have done, I'm just showing you the very healthy elderly. For example, they are so healthy that in terms of physical activity, very similar to young people. Okay? Very active people, no dementia, good cholesterol level, and comorbidities very low. So very, very healthy people. We vaccinate them, and then we follow the response to the vaccination. And when we did that, the elderly here are here on the right side. This is day 0 before vaccinations, 2 days after vaccinations, 7 days after vaccinations, and 28 days after vaccinations. We know that young people, healthy people, at day 7, they will see an increase in this biomarker here. These are the cells that produce antibodies to protect you. And if you look at the elderly, they also produce high levels of these cells to produce antibodies and to protect you. So if you sustain health, this is relevant also at the immunological level, also for your vaccination campaigns to make sure the elderly go through their annual jab, for example. It's also, we have to prove whether healthy elderly, in this case, have also some benefit at other levels, but we are focusing on the immune system. And we have communicated quite a lot about this study. It was quite popular when it was published to show really that vaccination works. It's a protective tool, because in Europe, when they vaccinate elderly with the same vaccine, 50% of the people will respond to the vaccination only. But in Singapore, it seems there's something special with you, which is very good for you. The response to vaccination is very high. So does it come from nutrition? Does it come from exercise? Does it come from your social network? These are things that we are currently trying to investigate. So I've been asked 2 years ago or more to do this presentation. Can we turn back the clock on aging? Can we go back to our youth? Some people have shown very recently that exercise is something that is good for you. Moderate exercise. I would like to add that this should be early habits. When you're 70, when you're 75 or 80, it's difficult to modify the habits. Sometimes you want to modify, but the health of your knee does not allow you to run or to walk. So it's a bit late, a bit difficult. So you have to integrate those habits early, improve education and access. This is a picture from Singapore, so you are lucky, you have a good environment to perform such activity. There's still the opportunity to do it. It's not everywhere. Nutrition is also very important. The quality of the food, the quantity of the food is very important. Again, it's early habits. I tried last year. I went to visit my grandmother, and I asked her, like, can you try to move a little bit from this type of food and eat a bit more than that? And she told me, I'm 78. It's not gonna change. So, and I understand. Maybe I will respond the same. So it's difficult also for us as young to change our habits. So imagine somebody that has been having the same habit for 75 years. It's unfair to say, oh, why she doesn't change? You have to understand that. You have to understand the complexity and the difficulty to change. Okay? But there are ways actually we can do that. So actually what we have done in the lab using the immune system again is we know like old people sometimes they have this erosion. The capacity of the immune system to function is lower than the young people. So what we have done is using some drugs, so in the lab, testing the cells, adding some drugs, trying to revert that. And this is what we are able to do, is to revert the capacity of the immune system, some specific cell type to work. And it's interesting because these components, these drugs, these novel drugs, modern medicine actually, if you do a bit of search, they are part of a series of components that you can find even in traditional Chinese medicine. So please be careful. I'm not saying that you should go now buy this and eat and drink. Okay? It's just, this is true what I'm showing you. You probably can translate better than me. But this is really to show that these drugs, modern drugs, I mean, they have been studied for many decades sometimes, and you can find in many different type of food. So we go back again to nutrition, of probably ways you can sustain, improve, or at least modify your immune capacity. So the last slide is to show you one study we are setting up since a couple of years with the NUHS, where is the SG90. These are people that are older, that are 90 and older. We are recruiting, we get blood, we get different type of samples like urine and stool, etc., to understand really the complexity of the biology of these people and to understand how they made it to 90 and how come they are so healthy. Because this could be a gold standard for us, an example we should follow. So this is another example how we can model, because some people use animals like mice, etc., to model aging, and I mean, I prefer the human studies, okay? Very important slide is my team, because I'm here just to blah blah and they are doing the most of the work. So I would like to thank them and thank you for your attention.